Before we get started, again, I'm the announcement guy. Lunch. Everybody filled out that little thing, right? Bless you. Gesundheit. Lunch is being brought in again today for everybody, just like yesterday, so we don't have to walk through the streets of Dubrovnik. What's so funny about that? Okay. And tonight, conference party. Woohoo! 7 o'clock. The directions are in your badge. Don't ask me, but there they are. I haven't read them yet, so hopefully you find it. And don't forget to bring your Geeko dollars because those are your drink tickets. And those are the announcements. No. I have one more. Swebor. Where is he?
Working.
Well, you better drag his butt in here. Hold on a second. Ay. Swebor.
You have the microphone. Come back. E.T. phone home.
Okay, you have to say something. Okay, so our hardworking organizer, he can't get enough of organizing events. So first of all, thank you again for pulling this together. But Swebo is also organizing a event in Zagreb, and so he gets to work a little self-promotion now.
Thank you, Robert. Hi, everyone. So, we actually have a local free software Linux conference in Zagreb that's been going on for over 20 years. It will be the 21st conference this year, and it will take place in June from 16th to 18th. So I'm calling for every one of you who want to visit Zagreb or visit a conference or give a talk, have anything to say. There's a banner outside. You can see the web page address. Take a look at it, talk to me today or tomorrow, whatever. And let's also meet in Zagreb. And that's it. And I hope you're having fun here today, the days before, and tonight. Thanks.
All right, so those were the announcements, and with that,
About the bus tomorrow.
I don't know about you.
So tomorrow, those guys that leave early in the morning tomorrow, at about 11, we have a bus for about 15 people that will go to the airport. So if anyone wants to take a taxi, save their money, we can get them there. 11:30 downstairs, okay?
All right, and now, with that, we are in IRC, openSUSE-project. So we can, if anybody's awake, the rest of the world, they can ask us questions, and we are live, getting broadcast on Bamboozer, and we are live here. So with that, let's get started with the project meeting. We don't really have an agenda, and I think the El Presidente, Mr. Cloud, maybe has a few words to say to get started.
No,
Sure you do.
I actually don't have any more to say.
We love to put you on the spot, you know that.
Yeah, well. Okay, come to my talk this afternoon at 2 p.m. It's going to be about OpenStack. Yeah, shameless advertising. So it's always good to have a face-to-face meeting for the town hall. As you know, we have the bi-weekly meetings on IRC. And by the way, don't forget to join for the bi-weekly meetings on IRC because we'd like to have more people participate. But having face-to-face discussion is always very productive. And I think it's a good opportunity to ask a lot of questions if you want to raise anything you'd like. I know there are some topics that we'd like to discuss, for example, the release schedule and so on. But it's really the place where you should raise anything that is important to you, and the board obviously will try to answer, but everybody else here and hopefully also in IRC should also participate and answer the questions. It's not just you and us. It's all of us together. So, yeah, I guess that's it. You want to say something, Richard? Oh, yeah. Well, if you have any questions. If you don't have any question, we're done. No? Okay, who starts?
Come on, somebody.
Oh, we should probably give the microphone back.
To whom?
You can start.
I don't have any question.
No, say it. No, that's good. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Say it.
So I know very little about the project, I'm afraid, but I'm eager to learn more. And one of the things that I'm wondering about is what's the relationship between openSUSE and the SLE variants?
Okay, so there was actually a session about that. It was big on the schedule and it was even announced by Costas in the opening keynote. So you should have gone there. But anyway, so the simple and quick answer is openSUSE is the upstream for SUSE Linux Enterprise. So we base our enterprise products on some version of openSUSE, and every development that we do in terms of features specifically for SUSE Linux Enterprise first, or at least latest when it hits SUSE Linux Enterprise, also shows up in openSUSE. So it's our testbed, our development platform, our upstream project that basically all SUSE employees contribute to and that we use as a base for our product. And more would be in my session, or we can do this in a personal conversation one-on-one, because I don't want to steal 1 hour of the board's project meeting time. Yeah, that could be done in 5 minutes, I guess.
I'm sorry. So I know from, well, this sounds very similar to the Fedora, like how Fedora is organized, right? With the Rawhide or Fedora itself being the testbed for the RHEL product. Not officially though, and the Fedora people are, at least from what I know, they try to hide that fact. In fact, they claim, well, Fedora is a community product and all, and you know, Red Hat influence is negligible.
We don't.
And the community, well, tries to hide that, right? How is that for the openSUSE project? Is there like a really clear, say, relationship?
As Jan said, we're the upstream. It's as simple as that. If we've got no concerns over being an upstream project, it's just like GNOME's an upstream project for desktop environment. It's that simple. We have our own releases which are stable, etc. We're looking at the development model with Factory being a stable platform for developers, regular users who aren't concerned about having the latest and greatest, etc. can use the standard releases. But what goes into openSUSE, the SLE product has the option of taking the best bits if they wish. If they don't want some of the features that we have in openSUSE and they develop their own, they can then submit them, or they will submit them back upstream for hopeful inclusion within openSUSE. It's we have nothing to hide.
Right. I mean, there's nothing to hide, and I mean, this year we didn't, but last year we had statistics, and the statistics are also available on the web. The contributions to openSUSE from community members, they don't also happen to work for SUSE, is significantly larger than those from SUSE people. So it is a community project just based on the contributions. And as Andrew said, a good example, openSUSE default desktop, KDE, SLE is GNOME, and it's been like that for quite a while. So, you know, we stand on our own as a community, and the SUSE employees are just part of that community. And just because a SUSE employee, if they try to do something that people don't want, then it doesn't go anywhere. So there's no, there's nothing to hide.
And we are also a community project, meaning we're not just a distribution. Because you only talk about SLI, but openSUSE is not just the openSUSE distribution. We are many more things than a distribution. We have OBS, for example, which, yes, it's based on SUSE people mostly, but there are a lot of volunteers. We are also doing things like producing, I don't know, Debian and Fedora packages, which is not related to the distribution, but related to the project, because as a project, there are people that are inside the openSUSE project, but don't use openSUSE as a distribution. They use Debian, or making packages for Fedora, or Gentoo, or whatever. I don't know if I'm right on Gentoo. So it's not fair to compare SLE with openSUSE, because openSUSE is much more than a distribution for a desktop, And we are really proud because even though SUSE is sponsoring us, we are independent of doing things our way. And nowadays this is very clear with the latest things that happen. It's very clear that SUSE, even though they sponsor us, they give us great freedom of doing whatever the community thinks is right to be done. So,
and but it is a two-way street as well, which is,
yes,
I can give you like a nice concrete example of one that's just happened over the last couple of months, where, I work on the no maintenance. You guys had 3.12 coming out. At the same time, there's a new version of SLI on the way. So and that was being based on what we were committing to openSUSE. So if we had included 3.12 as quickly as we possibly could have, that would have actually made things a lot more complicated for our friends who work on SLI. So just talking with them, we figured out a way where what we were committing to factory, we kind of held back and left 3.10 in there for a little bit longer than we would have planned. We did our stuff elsewhere in OBS. So, it really is sort of a nice, proper community effort from sort of all sides of how you look at it. We'll make accommodations to make things easier for SUSE, and yet we still get to do everything crazy that we want to do.
anyone else?
I was just wondering, do you have any other derivative distributions apart from SLES? Is that it? Does anybody else try and use your stuff as a base?
There are... so one of the projects that SUSE started was SUSE Studio, which is effectively an online tool for building custom distributions, or it was more focused at appliances. But there are several projects on there now that use Studio exclusively, but with a very narrow focus. Some of them are like quantum physics, or things of that ilk that aren't really going to be taken up by the wider community, but they have a very small niche that they're quite happy in. So in theory, yes. Practice, there's not a Linux Mint, if you will, or something along those lines. There was an effort a while back to have a full-on derivative. I think that's quietened down somewhat due to workloads, etc., of the people involved. So there's no real derivative, but you can go onto Studio and you will find a whole heap of niche variants, if you will.
And what fraction of your 7,000 packages end up in the SLES server enterprise distro?
Jan can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's around about 2,500. Yeah, about 2,500 packages out of the 7,000.
And there's also some
And we apparently have a list of all the derivatives on a wiki page that none of us here knew about. Okay, so there's a question on IRC, and Ivan's asking, is there any plans for some LTS editions? Well, we already have an LTS edition with Evergreen. So the Evergreen project is a community project to give long-term support, so patches for specific versions of the distribution. The latest version being 13.1.
5 years.
5 years? Thank you.
Follow up.
How long? Oh, the question is now 5 years. I can't remember how long Evergreen is because I don't
think
use it.
it's 2 more years after the 18 month support that we give. If I'm
Okay,
correct,
so
it's 2 years after.
it's 3.5 years
Yes.
rather than the usual 18 months.
Yeah, but yeah, anyone is free to join and make this for more time.
Yeah, so on our wiki, if you look for the Evergreen page, I'm sure those guys have an email address or mailing list that you can get involved and help with because I know they need it.
And from what I heard, from what I read in the mailing list, there are some packages from older distributions that are still being maintained because some people just don't want to throw their servers or change their servers. So it's at some points it goes further than 3.5 years or however that is. I think they make some security.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that, we don't plan this stuff from a board level. This just happens. Evergreen just happened. There's a group of openSUSE users that decided they wanted a longer cycle of security releases and security patches, and they decided to create Evergreen. So there was no plan. There was no, oh, we should do this, and you are the chosen ones to do that. This is not how our project works. We don't have a technical steering committee. That's on purpose. We want things like that to just happen. So if you want to have a 5-year openSUSE distribution with security patches, start it. Join the factory list, join the project list, gather a couple of people. Generally, this is really easy in the openSUSE build service, okay? We have all the tools that are there. It only takes effort from whoever is interested to do it. And, none of us that sit up here and happen to be elected on the board, nor, the guys that put together factory and do all the maintenance there are going to stop you. So, this is an open project. Everybody who is willing to put in the effort and the work and share their work, you're welcome to do it. So if Evergreen is not long enough, more power to you, do it. I mean, we have people that are interested enough to trying to keep KDE 3 alive in the openSUSE build service, and it's becoming increasingly harder because the upstream is no longer maintained, but they're doing it, right? And so that just shows you the freedom that people have within the project and the opportunities that they have by using the tools like the openSUSE build service, which is really great. I hope that answers the question. Anything else?
One question I have is, what do people feel the focus is, or focus should be, for openSUSE as a distribution? Is it focused on end users, focused on desktop developers, focused on web developers, or developers in general, bleeding edge? I'm interested to find out what people think the focus should be and what they feel the focus is now. If you don't feel that there is a focus, then by all means, you can air that, and you may be right. I'm not trying to guide and put words in your mouth. I'm interested to get feedback to understand what people think and why they think that.
But is there really a need for a focus for openSUSE? I mean, if we look at what Robert just said with LTS, if you want to have a little bit more of Evergreen, if Evergreen's not enough, go ahead and do it. I mean, the community is about people who do stuff. If you want to have openSUSE to focus on desktop developers then go ahead and create an environment and build a team of community members who think alike to focus that, and maybe even create a derivative like openSUSE Education, which adds education-focused topic packages on top of the openSUSE distribution. But if we are a community project that should be welcoming to everyone, if we really set a focus area or focus for the distribution, don't we exclude people? I mean, if I'm not a desktop developer and the openSUSE project tells me like, we're focusing our distribution on desktop developers, then it seems that the openSUSE community and the openSUSE distribution is not the right choice for me. And I have the feeling that with tools like OBS, we have the possibility to create any distribution we like, and we can mix and match packages from the Open Build service into openSUSE to create what I want to use openSUSE for. And I think that's the really good thing about openSUSE, that we're not focused on one specific use case.
While I do partially agree with that not having a focused target means that we are as inclusive as possible. As with anything, if you're doing something without focus, it's never going to be as good.
Yeah, I would disagree. When I joined the project, one of the greatest things that I found out was that I could have the same system as a sysadmin, but he had more repositories included. But when I had a problem, I could easily guide him, because I'm an end user and I'm not a developer or something, so what I want to say in technical terms, it's a bit, you have to read between the lines in order to understand me. So it was amazing that I could do that. Also, I have some developer friends, and what I got from them is that it's really nice that they can actually understand. They like openSUSE because they can actually understand end users that have problems like me, cannot actually say what the problem is. I say, we find something and this blips and I don't know what to do, you know. What do you do? It's like a live bug report, and it's amazing that someone very technical can share the same desktop, the same distribution with someone else, and be able to interact each other and actually bring results and making users' life better. If there is, either this is an end user, either this is a sysadmin or whatever. I mean, Yast has millions of modules that people can do amazing things with that.
Yeah, if you look at some of our peer distributions, they've managed to grow their reach because, for instance, they focus somewhat on, for instance, developers. Then you get users of a specific application that they've tested and they've tried and think, oh, this is great, and that they then look at what that developer has used as the distribution for development, and they go, well, I need to use that distro because the developer used it, so it must be good and it must work great.
I partly agree to that part, but I don't think that openSUSE as a project is really missing focus, because we got, need to go away from that speaker. We got different teams that are focusing on different things. I mean, there's the GNOME team, which I'm sure has the goal to deliver the best and most stable GNOME and most latest GNOME for openSUSE. There's the KDE team, which I'm sure have exactly the same thing. We have community members who are working on scribers for creating, publishing material. We have, in OBS, we have development tools projects where you can get the latest Python, the latest Perl, and so on. So I think we have a lot of choice. We are not in the position that we need to focus on a specific area, but you can really build what you want openSUSE to be with OBS. If I look at my system, then I have around 13 to 14 different OBS projects in my repository list, because I want the latest Python packages on my system. I'm looking for the latest LibreOffice packages because I want to have the latest stable of that. So I don't really get why we should enforce ourselves into a position that we are focusing on end users or we are focusing on desktop developers. And by the way, if you want to do this, how do you want to achieve it if what Robert says is true, that the board can't point into any direction?
And we are not like any other. So it took me 3 years to understand that.
Well, as for your last point, it's probably not a matter of enforcing, but soft massaging into that direction, especially with pouring money over things. If you wanted to focus, I think the web developer example was good. If you wanted to be a web development platform, whatever, then you would probably want to be compatible with the latest Opera release, say. Yeah, that would not be a focus of, say, other distributions, because they would not care about proprietary software, right, working by default. Or you would care for Firefox 0.8 because, you know, your web developers might have the need of being compatible with legacy applications. But yet, openSUSE does not even ship GTK1, I guess, which might not even have to be used by Firefox 0.8. I don't know. But the point is, openSUSE does not care for legacy, right? So there is no, while there's the absence of focus. If you focus there, then you would need to actually develop into that direction by, for example, pouring money over that. And if you say, well, there's no need for focus, then let me ask you, is there a need for openSUSE then?
I think if we want to sell something, it's maybe that we tell people more that they're not just getting a distribution, they get a tool chain around it. OpenQA is the build services. We can, a lot of times if I show people the build service and they have some basic understanding of packaging, that's like aha moment. It's not like I'm just getting a distribution where I then have to do everything manually on top. I get a framework which is integrated into our distribution somewhat, could be better maybe, but I think that could be a selling point. And if you cater to developers, that's a big one.
So I personally would be more for some focus or areas of focus, but on the other hand, we are focusing on variety because we make it easy to package things, make it easy to build a repo for a certain project, like desktop environment is there, which is well maintained, and I think this is a good thing. On the other hand, I think there are some areas which could be improved, maybe some kind of usability for new users to find what they can use. And also documentation is lacking, so maybe just make it a year, or the year of documentation, or year of usability, whatever. It doesn't have to be a focus like 10 years, because no one can look into the future and project so much. So I think about more areas of focus, not only one focus, because currently the focus is variety, and I think it's great. Okay.
So, just to answer the IRC comment about my question from Manu, it's like I say, it's an open question to everyone to air their feelings. So if you don't feel that we do need focus on any specific point, then great. I'm just trying to get some feedback from the community to understand the current mindset that's going around. At my work, I see a lot of different viewpoints from different distributions on their targets, usage, etc. So I'm just curious as to, you know, the community that I'm involved in, what their thoughts are.
Hello. On this topic, I would say that there's a great infrastructure in openSUSE. All the tools, all the build services, and so on. And I think that not a lot of people know that really. And maybe one focus should be to promote that. So maybe it shouldn't be about focusing on a desktop user or web development or something like that, but maybe just finding focus on in which direction, in what stuff that you have that is specific to openSUSE that you should promote. And also, I would say that Just is a great thing. And I also don't think that a lot of people know about it.
Yast is quite a polar and quite a divisive tool. I know quite a few people that they've used, openSUSE or SUSE in the past, and as much as they liked it, they were put off by Yast. My response to them is, well, you don't have to use it. If you like using your config files and you have specific scripts for configuration, whatever else, do that. There are alternative GUIs to configuration that you can install instead of using Yast. It's not mandatory. But back to your first point of raising awareness, etc. Yeah, that's unfortunately an issue that we've had for quite some time. And we've never really, in my viewpoint, we've never really worked out how we should do that. So ideas, most welcome.
Hi. As an old developer, Unix developer, I can say that it works for me, developer, 15 years ago. Now it's not. So it's nice that you ask people what you want to be, openSUSE. As developer, I would like to have nice distribution which already have everything inside. And all of us knows that it's impossible, definitely impossible. So I think that you should create product which is nice for end users, not for us developers. Because I think that developer must know what he is doing on that system. If he don't know anything about Linux or Windows or anything, how he can be a developer? So for developers, yes, you can have chain tools like MingW or etc. packages, but I don't see any reason to go in many directions with distribution. So you must have stable, nice, and good distribution for end users. So that's the only way how can you attract them to use it.
And there is a point that Just is amazing. It's an amazing tool.
Yes.
Because if you are a rookie and you don't want to learn anything, you just want to set up a system that runs as all Windows user or
Last time when I install openSUSE in my virtual box, Just crashes. So okay, I made my config files by hands, by VI, but that are things which must work perfect for end users, not for me.
Yeah, I'm talking as an end user.
I always can write it works for me because I will find a way how to set up something.
So as a developer, sorry, Kula,
Yeah.
as a developer, do you think we should look at having an SDK release, if you will? So an openSUSE release with the develop projects for the different languages, etc., enabled by default, so that a developer can do that install, and if they need a specific language, whatever else, it's a simple...
I'm core developer of Lazarus project. That's multi-platform, RAD IDE. I mean, it's copy of Delphi. On Linux, on Windows, on Mac, it works. So I create my binaries on one machine on Linux, native binaries, and I push it. So that means I can install my tool anywhere. If you want to attract developers, okay, you must have people who will maintenance development packages. And it's very important. I'm using Fedora at the moment because they push the cross-compiling tools in their distribution. and they maintain that. So that's the point. You can develop on Linux in VI and compile it, definitely. Don't just move away, for example, GTK1. It's still used. It's still used, believe me, it is. So developers are one world, and end users, again, are another world.
Wow.
When they install distribution, they want it to work out of the box. So I think the focus must be on stability and hardware support. You have YAS tool, which is pretty nice for end users. So I think that focus should be on distribution, which is stable and which works.
Thanks.
That's all.
Thanks. Thanks. I mean, the thing is, you know, as developers, we're also end users, right? Yeah, you develop and you know how to set up your development environment, but if everything around you falls apart, you're not going to be happy with that either, right? So the end user and developer part is, that distinction is very fussy. And, you know, the end user is an unquantifiable animal, right? Because, well, there are end users that love KDE, and there are end users that love GNOME, and there are end users that love something else. And I think in the end, if you look at what we have in openSUSE with 5 integrated desktops, and I think they all work pretty well, I think we're catering to a large community of end users that, you know, we may not advertise enough, but I think we're a step ahead of other distributions in that area. And Kuo had something to add or a different changing topic. So go ahead. Bless you.
I actually can't hear the terms developer and end users in this context at all, because it's just as you just said, it's basically everyone needs everything, and no matter who asks for focus, if the discussion continues just a bit longer than the first 10 minutes, you will figure that he needs everything else too. Like, I'm a web developer, I just need web tools, and a browser, and the editor, and a kernel. Oh, a bootloader too. Yes, okay, of course, I need Samba shares. And yeah, GNOME, okay, I need GNOME too. Oh, my wife needs KDE, and she plays games. Okay, then, yeah, okay, then make it everything. But focus.
Well, as an RC SCF just said, the focus should be stability, and I think the changes being made with factory, etc., should hopefully address that issue. And that's one reason why I asked the question is, you know, some people have a specific viewpoint and they may not be as knowledgeable about the bigger picture. Whereas as release manager, you get to see all sorts of crazy nonsense. So you're slightly more in tune with what is actually required. But focusing on stability, I see that as obviously a sensible thing. I mean, you look at Debian, Debian's quite stable.
I mean, sorry, but with the whole focus on, are we focusing on instability? I mean, you know, we don't exactly want a distro that crashes. Isn't it kind of implied?
Depending on who you ask.
The focus on stability is really something that you put on presentations. But I don't know who said it, but I think it's still true that fixing a bug doesn't get you late. So you need something fresh. And I mean, yeah, you can say, yeah, the new release came out 2 years and we fixed 900 bugs. Unfortunately, not the one you are interested in, but 900 other bugs. And we did not implement any features because we wanted to implement focus on stability. So the feature you wanted is still not in, but we fixed 900 different bugs. So it's kind of not really a selling point. You can talk about it, but there's a reason why Debian has so many derivatives, because Debian concentrates on stability. Yeah, but the users are actually using tested or unstable or Mint or Ubuntu or what you can go on. I don't know anyone who uses, I mean, they deploy it, but they don't use Debian stable. I don't know anyone. Perhaps there's one.
There are a couple here, so, but.
So now I have two.
I think we can, go on with the focus discussion for probably the rest of the day, but there was also a point on IRC about the release cycle. So maybe for the last 20 minutes that we have, maybe we can switch that topic.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, yeah, so, yeah, we had a question from SCF about the release cycle. Just to make sure everyone knows, our usual release cycle is 8 months. This year, the next release is going to be in November, so that's 12 months after the last release. And sort of the question is open to, what should our release cycle be? Should it be 8 months from next November, or should it be 12 months, or should it be something else? And that's definitely one of the questions sort of I wanted to ask the room to get everyone's feel of where should the 13.3 release be.
And maybe Kulo should give some background from a release management perspective, since he also had a very nice summary when we had the discussion on the mailing list about summer releases and how that's difficult and things like that. So maybe Kulo, you just want to say a few words to that before we get into the rest of the discussion.
Sorry.
Yeah, there are several aspects of releasing that are very hard to summarize in a sentence. But the thing is that 8 months are very challenging because they have one spot, or they actually have 2 spots that are challenging. For the November release is okay because you have the full autumn to concentrate. But the spring release or the July release that we have right now is very challenging because there are so many holidays and Easter. I mean, not in every country, but in those countries we have our contributors in. The spring is really full and people start to go outside and don't fix bugs, and additionally to that you can't really delay the July release because, as we learned in 11.2, there's a huge vacation spot right after, which is also a challenge for the whole marketing because you usually release do marketing after the release, but if the journalists and the bloggers are on vacation or the readers of those blogs are on vacation, it does not really pay off doing marketing. And so actually from the actual point of releasing, it doesn't make sense to release just once a year and find a good spot for that. But the other thing is that having have no release for 12 months is a huge challenge for having a conference. I mean, now it's April and 13.1 is just 6 months away. You still remember it, but if this conference would be in September, it would be quite challenging to talk about 13.1 because it's really old by then in terms of iPhones. I mean, this is really, the world moved on from it's okay to have everything, have something only once every 2 years. And yeah, it's challenging to find topics then all the time to talk about or to keep people to remember openSUSE distribution. So that's why we think we thought about having factory more in the focus, so that we, someone on IRC mentioned Arc Linux, so move to grab those that are really in need of having something to talk about and having someone to show the new stuff, always something fresh, because factory will be released every 2 weeks by means of milestones that work and tested and are stable, by means of OpenQA and general tested,
and really have factory not as a test bed for something that will happen somewhere, but really release factory daily, really, and mean it by also having it release ready every day. That's basically our main idea for the last couple of months. And we think once we're there, we can move the openSUSE releases as we know them, well, as they used to be, to a different release cycle. So we use this cycle now to actually work on changes, and we would actually have loved if more people contributed to that effort. Unfortunately, this does not happen. To make factory really kicking ass daily. And once we're there, we can talk about releasing only 2 years or 1 year or whatever, and then also talk about more, once we have less code streams, we can also talk about longer release maintain cycles, but the number, the years of maintenance is limited by the number of code streams you have to maintain. This is something that you have to realize also. And so I think the first step should be to split in the minds of people factory and openSUSE releases, and then make openSUSE releases stable and boring, and factory bleeding edge and kicking. So because I think there are two groups of people. I wouldn't call them developers and end users, but there are two different groups of people in the openSUSE community and in the Linux community in general. And I think we have to offer two different things to these. So that's why I don't think we should discuss a release cycle for openSUSE releases without also splitting openSUSE releases into two.
One question on that. I would really like to see factory working like that, but what about what's happening with Tumbleweed, which is partly the same thing you're talking about factory to become, right?
No, it's not. It's actually a very big misunderstanding of Tumbleweed.
Okay. Can you explain the difference? Because yeah, for me it's...
So someone called it Tumbleweed rolling release.
Yes.
But unfortunately it's not. Tumbleweeds are rolling. The Tumbleweed distribution is only jumping. So the Tumbleweed in general is just, Greg, can you see it? I put it in quotes. It's really a lot of effort, but it's just an add-on repository to the latest distribution. So you get the latest kernel, latest KDE, GNOME, LibreOffice, whatever Greg puts in there with a lot of effort on top of the latest release. And once the new release comes out, it jumps on that. So you still have the bump between the releases that are people usually afraid of. So, and factory will not do that. Factory will, or is doing this for years already, move on from one small step to another small step. So you have at one day you get a new KDE GNOME, the next day you get a new GCC, a new glibc, and it's really moving in small steps.
So out of my experience, once I decided to use factory, okay, I'm a rookie user, I'm not into everything like that, so after restarting my computer for a second time and making an update from factory, I had my computer Christmas tree, you know, no computer. I know I probably did something wrong, right? But, you know, I was trying, I think I was trying to build a lamp or something like that. And from some upgrade, my point is that is factory dangerous to new users to use, meaning that, okay, you have some new user that wants to have the latest thing into his laptop or his PC, and he says, okay, in that terms that you said that factory will work, I will install factory. Is that dangerous? Do those dangers exist if someone installs factory?
The thing is, even with the new kernel, even if you don't exchange any other piece, if you just update from the latest upstream kernel to the latest upstream kernel to the latest upstream kernel, there's always the danger that your machine will break. No matter what other component you touched, the latest kernel might not work on your driver. As simple as that. And so there will always be a danger, no matter what release cycle, no matter what release way, your machine might break with an update. And this happens with Ubuntu, this happens with Fedora, this happens with everything. It's just a matter of fact.
My point here is that maybe we should, probably you should, since you're doing all this, do that more obvious to people. Because I had people around that were on factory in order to make bug reports and help however they could, and they had that. They believed that factory would be like what Tumbleweed promised.
The thing is, you can't compare what's factory in 2013 with what it will be in 2014, because we put a lot more effort into actually releasing only what works, and that is the precondition of what I meant. So we have 3 steps, and we are already done with half of the first step. That is first making factory tested, then make it promoted or split in the mind of people, factory from openSUSE releases, and then change the release cycles.
So there's also a question on IRC about whether we get more stability with a 12-month release cycle. So I mean, stability is always questionable, right? As Kulo said earlier, there will always be somebody who will find a bug. It is software, right? Just like Linux supports more drivers than any other operating system. But there will always be 1 or 2 users whose hardware is not working because that particular driver is missing. So does that mean Linux doesn't support enough drivers? Yes. Does 1 bug mean we're not stable? Probably not, right? So the stability question, I think, is, it's loaded and it really can't answer. As far as, more newer packages, I think that, Stefan answered that already with saying, well, once we move forward with the new model, you will have the opportunity to basically live on factory tested, and then you get the latest and greatest if that's where you want to live. I think even in the new model, I think, where I disagree is that I think there's still room for Tumbleweed, because Tumbleweed is really a collection between major releases of various repositories, such as, sometimes the latest GNOME, sometimes the latest LibreOffice, almost always the latest released kernel. So I think it's a collection, and it would maybe, people like Jan, instead of having 20 repositories, can, maybe cut, I mean, not you personally, but, in many cases, for many people, it works out that, well, instead of adding 20 repositories, such as GNOME stable and Python and whatever else, often it works for them to just switch to Tumbleweed and get the latest stuff that the developers consider stable and basically ready for release. So I think there's still more leeway here and more facets to the thing, but so I hope this answers the question. I haven't seen any other one that... What? Yeah?
Yeah, you already answered about the dangers of factory. I think it's good. It's like paragliding. That's why I'm working in open source. When you live on the edge all the time, it's not for normal users. Do you read warranties in licenses? Nobody guarantees anything there. So I'm a developer. If I'm at factory at SUSE or I'm at Rawhide at Fedora, I know what I'm doing. And there is, you can write there, no warranty is that there is no warranty. Your disk can be swiped and that's it.
You should have seen Dimitri's presentation, I don't know if you did, about Linux teams and the people who are inside universities and try to promote open source Linux, free software. The thing is that people think that they will take openSUSE and do whatever it's on their minds. The truth is that if you study end users, users that don't want to be experienced users, want just to have a browser and go to Facebook, the thing is that when they pass from a proprietary software to free software or into open source software, they suddenly have more demands from their system. And that's...
You cannot teach them anything if they not have a will to do that.
I agree with you.
So
I'm just
yeah, you are
putting
right,
the elephant in the room.
Again, we are on two kind of users.
Yes, I mean, I had a guy who tried to set up a lamp when he installed openSUSE, and he told me, oh, I cannot do that because blah, 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 blah. And I told him, have you ever tried to install something like that on Windows? And he said, no, but you told me that I could do everything, so...
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So we're slowly reaching the end. So maybe Michal wanted to say something earlier. We're coming to a point where we will interfere with the next speakers, and Bruno would have the right to kick us out. So let's try and avoid that.
Yeah, I had just a little comment to what was Kulo saying, basically, and what was Costa's question, actually. Factory was really bleeding back in the days. Nobody was, well, users were testing it, but they usually run into some troubles, and it happened to me a few times that I basically just throw installation away and just started from scratch. With what we are doing and what we are testing now, we should avoid these kind of problems, and there still will be bugs. There still will be problems, but there shouldn't affect your ability to start your machine. They shouldn't affect your ability to update to the fixed version. So, yeah, it might happen that your favorite program would crash and it wouldn't work for a week, but you will be able to move on without throwing away everything. That's what we are trying to achieve, and that's what I really would like to have on my machine. I don't mind if it breaks from time to time, if I'm able to recover from that relatively easily.
Okay, great, thanks. So as I said, we're almost running out of time, and Bruno is itching to kick us out. So anyway, I think this is a good time to break. Thanks for everybody to participating. We have, okay, one more from Kulo.
A final remark, I hope, that I hear it very often that this is a community project and this is not SUSE and this is blah. I would like everyone to remind that this is only a community project if there are people helping beside me and my team. I mean, seriously.
Yep. Yep. Thanks. Thanks. So, as we have announced in the keynote, next year's conference will be in The Hague, and our organizing or leader of the organization will be Hans de Rad, who would love to be here, but unfortunately for personal reasons he cannot be here. So Hans, hopefully you're watching, you're listening. Thank you for volunteering to organize, and we wish you all the best, and we'll certainly help you. The community will help you. Hans has sent a little message that he would like everybody to hear. And Bruno or Jos, one of you guys? Jos, come on down here, please, and share Hans's message to everybody. And Hans, sorry that you can't be here, but we'll definitely look forward to see you next year in The Hague.
So, speak up. The only reason it's me here is that, you know, I'm a fellow Dutchie, but otherwise I'm just going to be reading Hans' message. And it's in English, lucky for all of you. I'll try my best Dutch accent. So, greetings my fellow geekos. How much would I have loved to be with you wonderful party people at this undoubtedly awesome conference in Dubrovnik. I am sure Sveber and his team are doing a tremendous great job in making you all feel green inside. Hopefully not on the outside. Unfortunately, due to some nasty health issues, I was unable to attend this conference, and out of sheer annoyance, therefore have offered to organize the next one in my hometown. A person should have goals, hopes and dreams, right? So next year's location will be the International City of Peace and Justice, The Hague in the Netherlands. It's a city known for its broad cultural influence, which also pretty much means a great diversity in party locations, of which I'm sure we can show some of you some of the best. So I wish you all a great openSUSE Conference 2014 and hope to see you all again in 2015. All the best and keep being green. Hans de Raad.
All right, and with that, thanks. We'll call this the end of our project meeting. And the next presentation here is given by Bruno, who will talk about osc14, and he will talk about The Hague and the conference and organization and so on. So if you can just take a couple of minutes and find your sessions, and then the program will continue, and Bruno will be in this room. Thank you.